Welcome back to the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson, and today I'm really excited. I'm joined by a couple guests here, all Fried Egg Golf members. At first, we'll be joined by Joseph LaMagna. He does a ton of pro golf coverage. I wanted to just debrief on what's going on in the fall. Who are five players to watch from this fall? I think Joseph had some great notes. It was a fun chat. And we talk about that as well as the kind of new live rules and regulations. No more 54 holes. They're to 72. So we talk with Joseph, and then I'm joined by our very own Garrett Morrison and Matt Rouches, both of whom do a lot of golf course and golf architecture content for us. Obviously, Garrett has his Designing Golf podcast. We talk about their recent trip to England. So kind of about golf in England, the highlights of their trip where they kind of hit the Surrey area as well as the southeastern coast of England. So it was a fun chat about their trip. That's the podcast, and we'll get rolling. But first, if you need to roll a suitcase around, you should talk to our partners at Away Travel. Away makes the best suitcases, in my opinion. I've been using them long before they were a partner. It is the best suitcase. I feel like since they started, I've been using them. The design's beautiful. My wife likes it, which is rare that I like something that my wife likes. The design's beautiful. It's simple, but it's also very functional. You can get so much space into it. It has an interior compression system that helps you fit that extra golf shirt, that extra pair of shoes, or a sweater in there. I'm always amazed how much I can fit into my carry-on. It's got a polycarbonate shell that is super durable. As like an aside, I use my carry-on almost all the time. I stuff it full. I carry around a lot of equipment. I got a new carry-on from them that's made the old one, rendered it like kind of, it's on the bench, but that thing is just about as good, like perfectly good as it was day one, 8 or 9 years ago when I started using it. It is an exceptional product. It is a suitcase that's not going to break. The zippers last, which is where I find a lot of suitcases wear out. And then the wheels are great. One of the things they did for us was they put our logo on the suitcase, which was super cool. And they do corporate gifting. So if your company is looking out for standout gifts for clients, employees, or a member guest tournament, think about Away. So listen, Away makes me have seamless travel. When I use my Away suitcase, it makes my life a lot easier hauling around the gear, the clubs that I have to go do when I travel. So if you're interested in Away, go to awaytravel.com/friedegg. That's awaytravel.com/friedegg, and you'll get 10% off your first order at Away. All right, let's get to Joseph LaMagna on the fall so far. All right, Joseph, Don Henley wrote a masterpiece, The Boys of Summer. Today we're going to talk about the less, hyped, the little diamonds in the rough, the boys of fall. We're going to talk about the fall slate here and just check in. I think this is a time where a lot of people tune out, but, in a way, a lot of stars are born at this period. Maybe not stars, but good PGA Tour players start to gain traction and, get their winning chops, contention, and a lot of times a good fall leads to a breakout year on tour the following year. So you've had your eyes glued to the TV. You've been, just haven't missed a beat with the Bay Current. I was in Austin a couple of weeks ago, and I said, "Do you want to go out to dinner?" And he said, "No, the Bay Current is coming on.
It's a true story.
I can't miss it." So, anyways, I figured there's no better person to talk to about the fall and what's going on. I gave you the task. Let's talk about 5 players that you've been impressed with this fall.
Yeah, Don Henley, Russell's father. Didn't realize that it could be so relevant to to golf in 2025. Now, this is sicko hour. We're talking about fall golfers. The way I was thinking about this, Andy, is like if people haven't been watching any golf since the Open or, maybe the Ryder Cup, but largely probably unplugged since the Open. Like, who are the players that they need to keep an eye on going into next year? So that's kind of the way I've been thinking about it. And most of these are going to be young names.
Think about, there are a lot of people that don't even know who Michael Brennan is. And, Michael Brennan just came into my life, and I'm already thinking, is this life after Michael Brennan? Is this how we're going to remember it? Life before and after.
Are we going right into one of the names? Because Michael Brennan, in all seriousness, like that is, I think if we talked about nobody else today, that'd be the golfer we need to talk about.
Let's talk about him.
All right, so wins the Bank of Utah Championship, right? That is he had won 3 times in 6 PGA Tour Americas starts, came in really hot, then
and PGA Tour Americas is what used to be Canada and Latin. They combined that tour a couple years ago. So it is the tour below the Korn Ferry Tour, which obviously is like AAA in baseball for
right.
golf.
And now he's skipping the Korn Ferry Tour, right? Because he's won on the PGA Tour. And I think there's a lot to chew on with Michael Brennan. First of all, he's 23. He's young. He has the pedigree. He was a very good college player at Wake Forest, won back-to-back ACC championships. I was texting a little bit with a mini tour player asking if he'd ever played with Michael Brennan, and he was like, yes, that guy is a machine. Like, he hits driver very well. And I think that's the part of the Bank of Utah Championship performance that will resonate and will stick with me the longest, is that he didn't do it by gaining 10 shots with his putter. He smashes the ball off the tee, like high 180s ball speed, elite speed, strong command. Like, he was changing up his trajectories. I don't know how much you watched of that tournament, Andy, but he was hitting the low bullets, like some of the high launch drives. The guy has a lot of game, apparently has a really strong work ethic. Like, I think this is somebody that we could be talking about as a top 20 player in the world this time next year, potentially, right? It's hard to say, but he has the game and the skill set that looks like it could translate to the next level.
I mean, he's played in, I think this was his 3rd PGA Tour start, but, first since the Americas. He's number 42 in the world now after this, like, which shows how good he was in Americas. And I think, like, in the world of PGA Tour we get, like, hyper fixated on the first 3 or 4 names on that PGA Tour list, list every year. And it's like, these are the guys. I think Michael Brennan was like 12, but it is not inconceivable, like, to see the 12th player in an NBA draft be the best player in the NBA. Like, Tyrese Halliburton, I think, went 12. Giannis went 15 or 16. Nikola Jokic went in the 2nd round. You talk about baseball, you look at the top 100 prospects list. It's not always the number 1 prospect that ends up the best player. I think if I were going to make a comparison, and this is not meant to be like an apples to apples comparison. If you were going to put Scottie Scheffler on a PGA Tour list when he was at Texas, he would have been in the 8 to 12 range. He was kind of one of the last players selected onto the Walker Cup team at LACC, which gives you an idea of like where he fell in the grand scheme of things. And this is like, projecting prospects in any endeavor is so difficult and so challenging. There's obviously can't miss people that come up, but there's no reason why a Michael Brennan doesn't end up being the best young player in the game. It's conceivable, and based off what he did in Latin America, I think it's like he has real results on a real tour, which not a lot of people have ever played on that tour as well as he has. I think he played in 15 events and had 12 top 10s.
Yeah. It's a great conversation around why certain players make it and others don't. But I do think a through line in professional golf is not getting bored. Is the players who are willing to just plot it out year after year. And from what I understand, anecdotally, like Michael Brennan is a very, very hard worker. So I'm excited about him. Who knows? Golf's so hard to predict. I think it's really hard to say that Michael Brennan's going to be X player in the world within the next 2 years, but he's 23. And we are seeing all of the best golfers in the world play their best golf between 27 and 35. He's got 3-4 years to develop, now has his PGA Tour card. I'm excited about what he could do next year, let alone 3 years from now when he's had a little time to develop. And he has that proven track record. He won 8 times in college, Andy. Like, he's not coming out of nowhere.
Stud. I mean, back-to-back ACC Player of the Year is like pretty crazy. I think the other thing that I like about the Michael Brennan story is he wasn't, I think, like, one of the challenging things that the Luke Clantons of the world, the Gordon Sargents of the world that are just handed a PGA Tour card are going to have to deal with is that they have faced zero adversity generally, and they get to the PGA Tour, and all of a sudden, their entire life they've been this big fish in a small pond type thing, and they go there, and it might take a couple of years to work out. And that adjustment of not being necessarily the guy. We saw Clanton, and I think, like, I'm not selling Clanton stock or anything, but you saw he had this meteoric rise as an amateur where, like, expectations are low. Like, you're playing in these events, and it's like, well, whatever happens, happens. And since then, he's cooled off a bit. He's been a good, not great player on the PGA Tour, and I think that is going to be a normal cadence for this number one player on PGA Tour U. Similarly, it feels like Michael Thorbjornsen, after a year and a half on the PGA Tour, is starting to put it together, and that is like an example of that. Michael Brennan, he went from being the guy, in the ACC, a great golf conference, one of the bona fide top players in college golf, and you get shipped off and you got to go figure out life in Latin America and Canada. And that is like, that's work. That's a huge adjustment. And he went down there and just dominated. And I think that experience will lend him a lot of benefits where he doesn't necessarily take things for granted, like someone who is just handed a PGA Tour card.
And another point on that, you don't get to hit driver everywhere on a lot of those golf courses on PGA Tour Americas, which is one of Michael Brennan. It is his biggest strength. He tears the cover off the golf ball. So I think seeing the consistent results from him on the PGA Tour Americas is some indication that he's got more game than just bashing driver over and over. You referenced somebody like Luke Clanton. Like, I think what we're seeing, Andy, a lot of these golfers who are struggling their first few years on tour, and even like Ludwig, has not been as consistent as I think a lot of people expected him to be, myself included. I think often what happens there is when golfers aren't on, they don't necessarily have the well-rounded skill set, and they haven't learned all of the other shots they can go to produce consistent results. So when you're 24, 25, you're somebody like Luke Clanton, you're feeling a little bit off with your swing, you're suffering some adversity, you see some of those poor results. So I'm eager to see what Michael Brennan, again, give him a couple years, but I don't think we should expect much until he is 26 or so anyway. So I'm just very optimistic about what we've seen from him so far.
I'm excited. They're obviously playing this week. I can't wait to watch and see what he does this week.
Good setup for him too.
Yeah. And one last thing with Brennan, you talked about the driving prowess. What's extra, I think, impressive about what he did in Utah was that is a golf course that it has heavy penalty for misses. He hits it really hard, which promotes, kind of bigger foul balls. The harder you hit it, the more offline it can go. And what I was like so impressed with was it's like Sunday, he's leading by 4 or 5 basically all day, and he is still just all out assault with the driver on that golf course, where I think so many people would have put it in neutral and been like, okay, like I'm just going to avoid penalty strokes and try and like kind of plot my way around the golf course. He just kept doing what he planned to do. It was hyper aggressive on a golf course that punishes over aggressiveness. And I thought that was what impressed me the most was he dismantled a golf course that with long drives on a golf course that penalizes generally the bomb and gouge methodology.
Yeah, fair. I mean, there's a lot of room out there, but yes, he continued to keep the throttle down basically until the last hole, and he led the field in strokes gained off the tee, put up a huge number. So very optimistic about him. He's got a game that seems to translate. Do you want me to move to my second name here?
Well, I mean, we could just keep talking about Michael Brennan.
I'm down.
It's the story of fall right now. What's number 2 for you?
You may know this in doing prep for this pod, but there's one golfer, Andy, who has at least 2 starts on the PGA Tour this fall and has finished top 10 in every PGA Tour event he's played in. Do you know who that is?
Wow. Wait, he's got at least 2 starts this fall.
Yep, and finished top 10 in all of them.
Top 10 in every PGA Tour event he's played in.
This fall, yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of a sicko stat, but I'll throw it
Rico Hoey.
That is close.
No,
I believe
he missed the cut at one event.
He's 3 of 4. That's another player we may get to. But no, there's a player.
I was ready to talk Rico Hoey.
We can talk Rico Hoey.
No, I want this one, though.
Garrett Higo. Garrett Higo is an interesting name. I think he's flying so far under the radar, and a lot of that's that
Didn't he cut his hair?
You know, I don't know the current length of his hair. I overlooked that in my pod
I think he cut his hair, which could be part of it. You can't cut those beautiful locks.
Yeah, maybe that is part of it. But with Garrett, he's an interesting name. I'd be curious what you think of him. He's basically been struggling in obscurity the last couple of years after a pretty successful start to his professional career. He won, I think, 3 or 4 times in 2021, including on the PGA Tour. He won that Palmetto Championship.
Yeah, at Congaree.
Yeah, back in June. And that wasn't a super strong field, but it wasn't a weak field either. I mean, he won a legit PGA Tour event. Now he's put up 3 straight top 10s, hits the crap out of the ball, like a high 180s ball speed guy. I don't know. He has put together a pretty decent. Like, he won on the Challenge Tour. He won on the DP World Tour. I want to say he has something like 8 wins worldwide. He's 26. Andy, like, I don't know that I expect this guy to be a top 30 player on the PGA Tour next year. But sometimes, like you're mentioning, stuff develops on its own timeline. Garrett Higo, T7 at the Pro Course, 2nd at Sanderson, 4th at Bay Current. Another good opportunity this week at El Cardinal. I don't think it's crazy that we see a leap from him, and he's a pretty good PGA Tour player next year. Not a superstar, but he's somebody to keep an eye on.
Obviously, I think like he has the ingredients of what you look for somebody to play well. And along the lines of Brennan, he's a young player who had like tremendous success 4 years ago. You know, it was, you know, we joked about life after Michael Brennan. You could say the same thing, what happened with Garrett Higo when he won that event. Like, everybody is like, you know, and I just think, again, adversity, struggles, people paint them as bad things for golfers. I think if you look at like the longevity of a career, if you're able to come through where things don't go your way, it leads to a better, you know, career in the long run, because you have handled that kind of stuff. And I think it's just like an important aspect of golf. Like it you know, you'll look at like Kyle Morikawa right now that's struggling, right? Up until this year, he's never had any of that in his life. And I think it probably gets more difficult to deal with the longer you go without it. And I'm very, you know, Higo, I remember, you know, there was a lot of President's Cup buzz around Higo, and I think like it's an interesting aspect of next year. And obviously, the President's Cup is not the Ryder Cup, but these guys, like, there's more international talent than ever before, and most of it's young. And it's like if some of these guys could take a step, it makes that competition a lot more interesting.
He's 26, just to put that out there, right? So now you're talking about a golfer with a good track record in college, and he turned pro, I believe, after his sophomore year. Was a good college player, won Challenge Tour, DP World Tour. Now he's gone through some of those struggles, like, has traveled the world, probably has a lot of experience under his belt that he can draw upon, finding his game again at 26, entering the sweet spot of his career. So yeah, I don't think this is a top 10 player in the world, but I'm keeping an eye on him. Anything else with Higo, Andy, or should we move?
He's got to bring back the flow.
Okay. I like that.
Who's next?
Let's go Rico Hoey. You touched on him. Some great reporting from Sean Martin back at the Napa tournament at Procore when Rico put the broomstick in the bag. I don't know that you can overstate how bad of a putter Rico Hoey is. He
like dead
stinks.
last, right?
Dead last, and bad. And when you have a great ball striker, which Rico Hoey is, I believe he's second on tour, strokes gained off the tee, eighth strokes gained approach. Some of that is because he's not playing the strongest field, so you can lower those numbers a little bit, but he's a very good ball striker. When you have a great ball striker who stinks with the putter, you see some missed cuts, you see some T8s, some T15s. They struggle to break through because obviously the putter is just, -4 for the week is really hard to recover from, especially under pressure. Like
it's more hard to recover mentally than on the scoreboard.
All of those things. Yeah. So the broomstick, how good of a putter can Rico Hoey become with the broomstick? Like, I think expectations should be kept in check there. I think if he is average, all of a sudden he's probably winning PGA Tour non-signature events and, maybe getting into some of those signature events. If he has a hot putting week, like the guy can probably hang with just about anybody. So something to keep an eye on. Again, I don't know. I think he's still probably going to stink with the putter, even with the broomstick, but it's a notable equipment change for a player that's very talented.
Rico Hoey, cult classic for me. When I started this business, I did a lot of college and amateur golf coverage, and this was prime Rico Hoey season. He was electric at USC. When you talk about like driving the golf ball, there are so few people that can touch his level of power and accuracy. He would hit driver where few people would even consider it. He can just drop a ball onto the tee. You want to talk about DOD? I know there's an Instagram guy that's DOD king. Rico Hoey is DOD king forever. He would, he'd play in the national championship and he would just drop the ball on the ground and hit it off the ground because it was like his fairway finder. I think Rico, I saw him witness one of the greatest 12-hole stretches I've ever seen. I think he was 10 under through 12 at Rich Harvest Farms in the national championship. Then it kind of fell apart, but it was like an unbelievable, sensational tee degree game. I think the big thing is like so much stuff with golf. When you are so uber talented in one area, sometimes other aspects of your game can slip off. With Rico, it was always like the driver swing. What made the driver swing so good kind of made the wedge swing really bad, cleaning up wedges. And this is like so much the case of young players, right? We just talked about Garrett Higo. You come in and especially now with the game, the driver is such a, if you can drive it really great, you can get hot with other things and get up onto the PGA Tour. And then it's like, wow, like when you look at the guys that are 35 and have been doing it for 15 years, I think a lot of these kids look at it and it's like, look at how good they are at every single aspect of the game. I might be able to, hit the driver better than them. But like game management, like course management, mistake management, dealing with like the bad stuff that happens to you on a golf course, wedge proficiency, all of these things are generally, I think, where younger players, why you're seeing what you said at the top, 28 to 35 being the kind of golden years of a career. It's when you still have your speed and you really kind of just stop being an idiot. I know there are like things with like Decade and other course management tools and course management coaches that are helping kids. But like the number one thing, just like your golf swing, when you can self-correct, when you're able to diagnose a golf course and understand what you should do in a situation that's rooted in like the idea of like, this is a good miss. This is where I shouldn't miss it. This is where I should be aiming, but being able to adjust on the fly and understand that comes in your late 20s. That's when you figure out the game. It's also when you start to like have life moments that make you realize that like, if I make a bogey and I 3-putt, it's not the end of the world. Like other stuff happens in life that's way worse than this. Like it's where life kind of interjects into golf. So I think like Rico Hoey, I am like the biggest supporter. I have golf swings on my phone still of him in college. I'm a Rico Hoey fanatic. So I'm hoping that the putter, if he's a top question to you, if he becomes a top 50 putter in the world, where does he go?
He probably wins. He wins a non-signature event. He's probably a top 25 player on the PGA Tour. He makes it to East Lake. I don't know that he maybe pops his head at a major. Like, he's a good player. He becomes a
fringe Ryder Cupper.
Okay.
The very fringes, like, names that could be thrown into the equation.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable.
The other takeaway from Hoey, and I think this is Akshay Bhatia is another player we've seen just completely change his career with the broom, where another really strong ball striker who had major putting deficiencies.
Adam Scott.
Will Zalatoris would be one where, where he went to the arm lock. But like, to me, like, I do not understand how any putter who's like in the bottom quartile of the PGA Tour, if you're not experimenting with these other forms of putting, whether they're broom or arm lock. I understand the sanctity of the game. I appreciate anybody that's like, I don't want to go to a long putter because of, this or that. But for the livelihood of your career, we've seen so many players just transform. And I think, I don't want to say that it just like is an ultimate remedy, because like putting at an average PGA Tour level means that you're one of the probably 500 best putters in the entire world of golf. Like that's not a easy thing to become. And I think even the low end of the PGA Tour is exceptional at putting if you compare them to a great amateur player. But I think like everybody should be experimenting with this stuff. And we've seen, like when Sean said Hoey's going to a long putter, I immediately was like, watch out. Because he's so good tee to green.
Yeah, and again, this week I think he's like 20 or 25 to 1 to win at El Cardinal. Like, the market is respecting Rico Hoey. Like, he's a legitimate threat to win golf tournaments now. But to your point, there's no guarantees. I still think he's going to be a bad putter. Siwoo Kim, broomstick, still a bad putter. Like, I don't think you should have a lot of confidence in Rico Hoey standing over a 6-footer late on Sunday with the broomstick. But again, his results should improve, and that immediately makes him a pretty formidable golfer on the PGA Tour.
All right, who's up next? We've gone through 3. I don't know if you can get better than Hoey and Brennan on a pod in October.
Yeah, we got to think about November. What Rico Hoey fans, what the name of Hoey heads. We got to figure that out. I'm 4. I'll go Michael Thorbjornsen. I think it's a name that he hasn't necessarily been incredible in the fall, but he finished 3rd at the Bay Current Classic. But I think when you tell the career arc of Michael Thorbjornsen so far to date, it's a pretty compelling story of a golfer that's probably going to have a good 2026. He's dealt with some injuries since turning pro. He's 24, was a great college player at Stanford, smashes the ball, but it was long and wild for his first couple of years on the PGA Tour, and especially, again, I think the injuries played a role in that. Now he's eliminated the wide misses and he's hitting it much more straight. And you're seeing consistent results from him. He has 5 straight made cuts. One of those is the Bay Current Classic no cut event, but he finished 3rd at it. So I think it's reasonable to just call that a made cut. Far more consistent in 2025 than he's been historically. And given his pedigree, how good he was in college, I honestly don't know that there are many players 25 or younger to be more excited about. Like, I think there's a good case that you should be more excited even about Thorbjornsen than Brennan, but they're right there next to each other, some of the best young talents in the world.
Yeah, I love Thorbjornsen. I think you're spot on here. The fall's been a big Thorbjornsen. Just since the Rocket Mortgage, he has 4 top 15s and 8 starts. That was after the Bay Current. I'm not sure where he finished in Utah and how that factored in.
37th and
37th. So he's got 4 top 15s in his last 9 starts. And I think like one of the big hallmarks of golf, like what you're trying to be is more consistent. Everybody's trying to be more consistent, and to see some of that consistency come through for a young player, I think like, this is the thing. It's going to be kind of the theme of this pod. Everybody gets these high expectations. Everybody loves to talk about prospects and the hope of prospects. And then so often it doesn't pan out in that, we live in this immediate instant gratification world, and golf is just not that. It takes time. And I think people underrate how good 75 on the PGA Tour, who's been doing it for 12 years, is. And they might not have the most eye-popping numbers, and it might not be the most impressive guy to watch on the range, but there's so much more that goes into being a tour pro than just TrackMan numbers.
I'd be curious what you think of this theory, Andy. Don't think I've run this one by you, but interviewing Frank Navalo earlier this year, one thing he said, it might have been when we were even done recording, is that in periods of stable equipment regulation, which I'd say we're in one right now, like every golfer on the PGA Tour is fluent in the language of TrackMan, has played with it for a while now, has hit modern drivers for a while. Like there hasn't been a lot of technological change. So his argument was that you see more stability, probably a little harder to break in as a young player, and a run like the one that Scotty is on is probably more likely to persist in a period like the current one. We'll see what happens with the rollback, but it's not that significant of a change anyway. So I think I'm wondering if that is also, I think that's a reasonable theory for right now, why it's also hard for a young player to break onto tour. Like you have a bunch of guys who are 28 to 35, used to the equipment, have been playing the same courses year in and year out. It's hard to break into that. What do you think of that theory?
I think that's spot on. Years ago, I would say this was during, maybe before COVID. I did a podcast with two economists. I think they were from the University of Chicago, who did a study in what technological change does to workplace. It was for labor, and they looked at tennis and the evolution of tennis from the wooden racket to the oversized racket and what it did. And it causes like this U-shaped curve. And effectively, when technological change happens, younger generations have a huge advantage over people that have learned how to do the profession with old equipment, because they have to relearn skills. Like hitting a driver fundamentally changed with a solid core ball and 460cc heads, and different players all of a sudden popped. Like, I think this is a way that you might look at Kenny Perry and be like, why did Kenny Perry get great all of a sudden? Well, like there was this seismic technological change, and all of a sudden his skills and his swing and his motion was more rewarded than, say, a Justin Leonard, who was a great player pre this technological boom. So what this study proved out and why they did it was that when you introduce a seismic technology, like say AI, what's going to happen is that younger generations are rewarded for effectively two like work forces. So if you think about like in life, it's a lot longer, but in a tennis career, that's like 5 to 7 years. So if you think about golf, we have probably normalized. I think that's a great take. We've probably now normalized because the mass technological innovation, they are still getting better. They're getting more forgiving. The technology is getting better, but not in a huge way. That seismic change probably ended about 2012, 2010 is where those drivers all were 460 cc's. The golf ball was the solid core ball, and TrackMan had come in. And if you think about a golf career, it's probably about 5 to 7 years, and we're right at the end of it where things would technically normalize, and we would go back to a sport where 27 to 35 is like the golden years, and it's not weird to see somebody compete until they're 42.
And the other point I would add, the driver, the TrackMan, course management strategies changed a ton, and I would argue that period was basically 2015 to 2020. There were a lot of mistakes being made in that period where golfers were way too conservative off the tee. Those golfers have been weeded out. Like I think by now in 2025, golfers get it, and the up-and-comers all get it. So I think we are in a stable period of not just technical innovation, but also strategy. And so we're probably seeing a pretty stable period of the top 10 in the world rankings relative to history. There will still be a lot of turnover.
I'll put that podcast that I talked about in the show notes for this. It still stands true. It was a fascinating study. I'll try and find the link to the study as well to put in there. I remember just devouring that study. I read through it like 3 or 4 times. Who's your last player?
Let's go a little crazier for the 5th one. Somebody not even a PGA Tour player, but I don't know, a golfer is no buzz, it seems like, but I think should have a little is Angel Ayora, the Spanish golfer. You're nodding.
He's a DP World Tour grad, right?
He will not make the PGA Tour as of now.
Okay.
So he's not in that top 10 to get his PGA Tour card as things currently stand, which is a point that I had in my notes. Like, of all the golfers who are going to graduate next year to the PGA Tour, he's one that you would want. He's 21. He has 5 top 10s in his last 8 starts on the DP World Tour. Probably a much better player than some of the other golfers who are, in line to receive their PGA Tour card. Smokes the golf ball. Like mid 180s again, like a lot of these other young golfers.
Common theme among everybody we've talked about.
Yeah. I don't.
The driver, I think irons are the key. Iron play is the key to elite success. I think baseline PGA Tour success now is dependent on the driver.
Driver is, I think, pretty much a prerequisite for long-term consistent success. I don't know how many golfers you could give me that aren't consistently strong off the tee who are good over a period of like 10 to 20 years. So a lot of these guys have speed. Angel Ayora, like, again, 5 top 10s in his last 8 starts. He's starting to peak. I think this is the type of golfer where if you were Brian Rolap on the PGA Tour, you'd want to say, like, hey, how do we get him on tour and make sure that he doesn't go sign somewhere like Live when you have a very promising young talent like this? I don't know. There aren't many golfers. There's a basket of them who are, let's say, 21, 23. We've hit on a few of them, but guys showing a lot of promise. I don't know that we know exactly how his game stacks up in strong fields, but seeing the consistent results over the last couple months from him, I think he's somebody you got to keep an eye on over the next 6 to 12 months.
Good. That's a great coffee golf tip. Now you got a guy to watch on. I love that you didn't go just PGA Tour. You expanded your bounds here to the DP World Tour.
Do you know much about him?
Takes us to our next topic I wanted to touch on briefly. Today was a lot of Live news. They're going to 72 holes, which is concerning for the name. But they also have pathways now with a Q school. To me, I would say the overriding thing here is they're trying to get world ranking points, proving they have open pathways, 72 holes of stroke play. And the other thing it feels like is that they are trying to compete with the DP World Tour that has historically been golf's world tour. What are your thoughts on Live and their moves?
A lot of, low-hanging fruit, funny jokes to make about how they're just they're reinventing golf, and then they found their way to the 72-hole format. I think there's probably a familiarity level that golfers like Jon Rahm have been clamoring for. Like, let's get back into a routine and have 72
I think Jon Rahm's
holes.
going to win more tournaments because the longer a tournament goes, the better players have a better chance to win. This is like, a marathon, the great marathon runner being like, hey, you know what? Now we're only going to run 20 miles. So you have less time to separate yourself. Yeah.
Getting into the cadence and getting ready for majors, is it the biggest deal in the world? Maybe not, but I think it's helpful. What I keep coming back to in my head, that I do not think this is necessarily the direction you thought we were going to go on this particular point, Andy, but 54 golfers getting OWGR points. I don't know that they're going to love the allotment of points that they get, because larger, deeper fields are more rewarded in the official World Golf Ranking system. So even if Liv does get OWGR accreditation, I don't know that they're going to be thrilled with the points that they're given. And then on top of that, the PGA Tour having all of these 70-player signature events that are getting OWGR points, it is a little bit of an own goal from the PGA Tour that if they had bigger fields, like 90, even 120 players, they'd be getting a higher OWGR allocation. So just from the standpoint of trying to attract talent and saying, hey, we have OWGR points now too, the PGA Tour could shore up their sales pitch a little bit by expanding their own fields. Like, I think the way that this is going to play out from an OWGR standpoint is going to be pretty fascinating. And I don't know that when the PGA Tour went to a 70-player field for their signature events, they necessarily considered this, because it is a little bit of an own goal in reducing their own OWGR allotment.
Yeah, this is just kind of the next chapter. I think one of the more compelling arcs, and we've seen young players struggle on Live for the most part, or just like struggle to find their footing, which I think is like understandable. At the same time, while they're struggling to find their footing, they're padding their bank accounts, which, for a 20-something golfer, it's nice to secure your financial future within, just merely by being invited into the league. But I think the McKibben success story is if you're awarded OWGR points and you have a real pathway to play your way into majors, I think you just hit on it with Angel Ayora. Does this become a more appealing proposition because of just how much they play for on a week-to-week basis? And listen, there are quality players on the European Tour that would boost the bottom half of that league.
I think it also, Andy, fits into what we're talking about, the best golfers playing their best golf between 28 and 35. I think the Live sales pitch makes the most sense if you're below 28. If you're 22 and you want to cut your teeth for 4 years and pad your bank account, have some financial security and learn the sport a little bit, or you're past that 35. Like your best days are kind of behind you. It is interesting to at least look at the complexion of the league, that there aren't that many golfers who are peaking between that 28 and 35 range. I don't think that's coincidental. Like there's a couple names, obviously Rahm, Neiman, Bryson, Patrick Reed's kind of at the tail end of that, but I think the sales pitch is most compelling for those guys like an Angel Ayora, a McKibben. Now that there's pathways, now that they're getting OWGR points potentially, it's not a bad sales pitch, especially for an international player who's under 25.
Yeah, listen, I think there's a lot of benefits to, we just talked about this, and it feels like you're talking a little bit outside both sides of your mouth with like the Michael Brennan path. I think that is a real, there are a lot of benefits to that path. One of the challenges of that path is financial security. And like anything, it's, but then on the other end, the idea of being able to play golf without having to worry about so many of the things, and also support yourself in the sense of, I know where my home is. I don't have to worry about paying a physio, or I don't have to worry about like, do I have enough money to set up the team that I want around me is a benefit to that. But I think it does come with like, it is a slightly less competitive and serious tour. And I think it's going to remain to be that. It's going to continue to be that until a lot of the mainstays who are just kind of winding down the ends of their careers and padding their bank accounts are gone. Like, if it seems like Liv's going to be here to stay, all signs point to that. Like, what does Liv look like in 5 years when Phil Mickelson, Ian Poulter, Lee Westwood, Henrik Stenson, Graham McDowell, those types aren't on the tour. Anthony Kim aren't on the tour, and it's real golfers at this point.
It's a good point. Look, to not talk out of both sides of my mouth, I think if you want to play the best golf you possibly can, Live is not an attractive option. Like the best golfers will come through the other pathway. But again, if you're an international player and playing around the world is more appealing to you than an America-based tour, probably the best time to do that's when you're 22.
All right, Joseph, big thanks for coming on. I know that this is a big week for you. You got to lock in to Mexico. And congrats on the move. You're in a new place, new recording setup. So we will talk to you soon. People can read your work in the newsletter. You've been doing great work in the newsletter. They can check out your design disasters and your weekly column. So thanks, Joseph. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, big thanks to Joseph. Before we get to Garrett, let's talk about our friends at Maui Nui. Maui Nui makes wonderful meat. It is the healthiest red meat on the planet. It is Axis deer from the island of Maui, where there's like an environmental issue that they cause. These deer live a completely stress-free life, and it creates this beautiful, healthy product that is delicious. There are a couple things they do. They have the ground venison, which makes for like great venison burgers, venison tacos, stuff I've made. They have the medallions that are more like a steak product. This is really tasty meat that's super good for you. high in nutrients, high in protein, and very lean. And then the thing for the on the go lifestyle, they make like meat sticks that are super convenient, easy protein. Protein's all the rage these days. They just make getting protein on the go really easy. So if you're interested, right now, Maui Nui is offering a free 12-pack of those venison jerky sticks that I talked about with your first order of $79 or more. Due to the nature of their work, supplies are limited. So once their subscriptions fill, spots are gone. You can go visit MauiNuiVenison.com. That's MAUINUI venison, VENISON.com/egg. And you will get that free box of jerky sticks with your purchase of $79 or more. That's MauiNuiVenison.com/egg. Thanks to Maui Nui, and let's get to Garrett and Matt about England. All right, Matt and Garrett, welcome back from England. You guys are back from a lengthy golf-heavy trip abroad. I mean, this was a marathon trip. So you guys went with a group of Fried Egg golf club members to England, and it really experienced both Surrey, the Heathland area of England near London, as well as the southeast coast. I'd love, one of the things I find most interesting as an American going abroad to different locales, whether it's Ireland or Scotland, those are the two that I've been to, is just the golf culture and how they're different across the different islands. How would you surmise and characterize English golf culture?
Matt, you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean, I think it's like very starkly different than American golf culture. And it's so evident, like right when you show up to these clubs, there's not like a stack of carts lined up outside of the clubhouses. Everyone's walking, everyone's playing very quickly in a fast manner. I think the most noticeable and thing I almost envied the most about just walking around these golf courses, because I didn't get to quite play as much as people on the trip. I was more so taking photos and documenting stuff, but there's just people roaming these golf courses like at all hours of the day, walking their dogs. There's always signs saying like public footpath right through the middle of these golf courses. And I was honestly like a little nervous, like going to like into these pro shops and having to ask like, hey, can I wander the course with like this group of golfers? Like I thought there would be like the American style thing where like, oh no, you can't, that's a liability issue. But no, it's like welcome there, where the golf course is just like an extension of the local communities, and people are just roaming about with their dogs, enjoying the land for what it is, even if they're not playing golf. So I thought that was one of the coolest things that was immediately apparent.
Yeah, just to add to that, we went to some of the most private and exclusive clubs in England. Our trip took us from Huntercombe Golf Club to Sunningdale Golf Club, and then down to the coast to see Royal St. George's, Royal Cinque Ports, and Prince's Golf Club. Then we went back into the Heathland area to see St. George's Hill and Woking Golf Club. And if you ask English people, they will say these are some of our most private institutions in the country, golf institutions in the country. But the feeling for an American used to American private club culture is that these clubs are very relaxed, that you show up, feel comfortable, that there's a real walking culture, and the courses are part of their neighborhoods. They're an extension of the living spaces of the people who live around the courses. And so that gives these clubs a very nice, homey feel.
I feel, just obviously with the UK and Ireland, really the British Isles, one of my big takeaways is how much more intertwined with just overall culture golf is. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the things that you guys hit on is just like the proximity to people. Like they are, they're often like right abutting town. Obviously Scotland, there's, lots of great examples of courses that abut into the town, where you start in the town, you play out of the town, and you come back to the town. In America, you could count like the number of courses that have that sort of feel on your hand, on one hand, where you start in town, play out, and play back, and the course is a functional part of society. And I like my one lasting images whenever I go abroad is always like, I love when I see kids like pushing a push cart to a golf course from a residential area. And it's like, as a kid, I went to a public golf course and I rode my bike with it on my back, but it was like a mile drive. It was a mile long bike ride. It wasn't just walking down the street to the golf course. And I just think that you read so much about like things that promote longevity in life. And so much of it is like, there are a lot of things, relationships, healthy eating, but like one of the big determinants is just walking.
Yeah.
And if you think about golf, it promotes two of those things, like relationships, like friendships that through golf. Like, I think it's kind of crazy. Like, my wife doesn't play golf, and I end up with, I'll never forget when we did our wedding invites. She was like, "Who are these people? I've never met them." And I'm like, I've played golf with them for like my whole life. Like, I spend more time with them than most of my friends. Like, they know everything about me. Like, it promotes relationship, but also if the culture is walking like it is abroad, it also is it's just an incredible longevity sport for your overarching health as you age in life.
If you think about where these golf courses are located in England, the spots that we saw, we went to the Heathlands around London, and we went to Linksland down on the southeastern coast of England, the Kent coast, basically. The history of the Heathlands in England is that it's land that is available to the public for recreation and exercise. This is the historical use of this kind of land for English people. And the golf courses are there as part of that history, but it's not the sole use of the land. I don't think the people who live around Woking Golf Club or Sunningdale Golf Club would accept a reality where the land of those golf courses would be inaccessible to them. And so you can see the people in these neighborhoods using the heathlands in the way that they've always been used, to basically walk their dogs and to go out and get some light exercise and fresh air. And that's so tremendously healthy. If you look into the history of Linksland, it's the same thing. The Linksland is really good for one thing, and that is recreation. It's not good for farming. It's not really good for anything except for the uses that it's put to in these coastal areas in the UK, golf and walking. And so, yeah, like Matt, I was really inspired by how these pieces of land still have multiple uses going on. It's not just golf, it's also a community recreation spot. And you have a sense that the people who live there know how to use this land and would not be persuaded to fence it off and devote it only to golf.
Matt, why would you say to somebody that's looking at booking a trip, why is England a great destination for a golf trip?
I think first and foremost, like with the trip that we did, we kind of saw two very different styles of golf between the Linksland on the coast with, the sea breeze, fully exposed, and then the Heathland courses kind of in the Surrey Hills. they're just like so starkly different from each other, but at the same time, they're like incredibly world class, some of the best golf courses I've ever seen in my life in these two starkly different environments. So I feel like that just presents like such a great opportunity. I mean, and these courses are what, 2.5 hours apart from each other at the most. So you could play in the Surrey Hills one day and then you're on the water on the coast the next day. And you get these two very different styles of golf. For the most part, I think the turf is pretty similar across the board. It's a little bit different when you get into the hills and the trees. But it's just like amazing the variety that you can get in such close proximity. I don't know if I could really compare it to much anything in the United States. Like if you were to compare it to a trip of Bandon, like Bandon, it's all fairly similar. Trails is the biggest outlier, but the variety in England and then just the caliber of how good these golf courses are, I think it's honestly like probably nothing really else comes close to it in the world.
I would like think maybe if you did New York with Long Island and then Westchester, you get that huge variety difference. But I think one of the unique things about England is it's all on sand, where Westchester, like if you were going to say what limits it, it's like the soils, and you can't get it to play great all the time. And obviously one of the things that's unique about the Heathlands is you get that kind of parkland feel, but it's on a sand base, which is extraordinary, right?
I think the closest comparison that I can come up with is the Melbourne Sandbelt, where you can see some of these heathland courses. It's really heathland in the Melbourne Sandbelt, inland courses that sit on sand and have varied vegetation around them. And then if you go on a Melbourne golf trip, you can travel to the Mornington Peninsula and see some modern links courses. The links courses that you see on the English coast are certainly of older vintage, but I think you can get a similar type of variety and array of interesting courses if you go to Melbourne. But there's really nowhere else that aside from Melbourne that comes close to this trip that we just did. And so that's probably the main reason that I would recommend it to anybody. It's completely unique.
A question along these lines. So obviously you have you fly into London.
Yeah.
The courses are mostly about an hour outside of London that are in like in Surrey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just roughly.
Huntercombe was like 90 minutes, which was the longest from.
And we stayed in Windsor, which is basically a town that is, southwest of the main part of London. And that put us in a position to get to these courses more quickly.
Would it be easy to get to London from there, though, like train?
From Windsor or from?
Yeah, from Windsor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't really do that. Matt was in a car, and of course I was in the bus with all the people who were on the trip. But historically, I'm not sure how much these train lines are still in operation. But historically, courses like Sunningdale and Woking Golf Club were established in their locations because there were railways that connected directly to them, and people would travel from London on the train out to these locations. So they certainly are accessible by rail.
And then the southeast coast, the other part of your trip, is about 2 hours from London, correct?
Yeah, 2 to 2.5.
A question I have is the southeast coast, where you get Prince's, Royal Cinque Ports, Rye, St. George's, Royal St. George's, is that enough for its own trip? Or do you need the other stuff?
I think without a doubt, you could just go on your own trip to the coast. I think the quality of those courses, like Royal Cinque Ports and specifically, I was like kind of sad we didn't get to like walk around and see it again, because there's this middle stretch of the golf course where there's just stunning golf hole after stunning golf hole. So I think without a doubt, you could go just to the coast there and like play 36, even more at each of the courses. We had a 36 hole day at Royal St. George's, and I think that was likely the fan favorite from all the people on the trip. So you can definitely like just go there and play the courses multiple times.
At Royal St. George's 36 hole day was incredible. And I think people really appreciated the opportunity to play that course twice and really get to know it. And a lot of folks on the trip wished that they had a similar opportunity at Royal Cinque Ports, where we could have just spent an entire day exploring that golf course, because it really deserves to be played twice. And then you could go to Rye Golf Club, which isn't far away, also on the coast, also a links golf course, also one where you could definitely play 36 holes and have a really good day. Then there are 27 holes at Prince's Golf Club. Now, I would say that Prince's was the least of the golf courses that we saw in terms of quality, but still really enjoyable, still right on the ocean, still on a legitimate piece of links land. 27 holes, you could definitely devote a day to that, or even a day and a half. And so you could construct a fantastic trip out of just visiting that piece of coastline. Littlestone is also a really good.
It's one of the template holes.
Yeah, I think, yes, exactly. Yeah, it's CB McDonald was inspired by one of the holes at Littlestone. I think it's a Harry Colt course, and it has kind of a heathland character, but it's close to the coast. So that's a terrific golf course that's roughly in this area that you could also visit. And then, above all, I think just traveling to this area is so fun, because the towns of Sandwich and Deal, and the towns that are kind of up and down this stretch of coastline are so interesting in and of themselves, have a lot of history. One of these towns that we were close to, I forgot the name of it, but was the town where all the ships launched during the Dunkirk evacuation, because it's one of the kind of shortest trips across the English Channel to get to France on the other side. And so that's where a lot of the boats that they sent out to evacuate people set off from. And there's so much interesting history to learn about there. Pretty nearby is where swimmers start when they swim across the channel. They do the channel crossing. And, Matt and I literally had a moment where we were looking across the channel and could see France on the other side. It's very, very close there. So it's a beautiful, distinctive area.
Attempted the swim?
Not at this point in my life.
That town
maybe 20 years ago.
That town's called Ramsgate, and from Royal St. George's you can see it kind of across the sea there. And then also I wanted to point out, just south of that is Dover, and they have the White Cliffs of Dover, which I learned about as I drove through the town and saw these enormous, like, bright white cliffs, which are really cool. But another thing that's really cool about the three courses in Prince's, Royal St. George's, and Royal Cinque Ports is they're all within like maybe 2 miles total of coastline, maybe 3 miles, whatever it is. They're very, very close in proximity. Essentially all their property lines touch each other. But the formation of dunes between these three courses are like so vastly different. It's like when I was there, I was like scratching my head, like just in disbelief. I was like, how can these dunes be so different and so close to each other? Because each three course has like a very distinct kind of formation of dunes in size and the way they look and the way they kind of interact with the golf courses. So I think that in itself like allows you to go there, and it doesn't just feel like you're playing three really similar links golf courses. They're all very, very different, and right there where you could literally walk between them if you really had to.
The Royal St. George's dunes are huge, especially in those first few holes, kind of classic dune land that maybe would remind you of Ireland. And then the Prince's dunes are much lower and much more linear. And so the course is quite flat, but has a lot of interesting micro contour through the fairways. And then Royal Cinque Ports
looks more like a Scotland
for sure
type of links land. And then
exactly right.
I've always thought Royal St. George's looks more like Ireland.
Yeah, that was our impression as well. And then Royal Cinque Ports is something else entirely, where there's a variety. There are some big dune formations at Royal Cinque Ports and some more subtle ones, but they have a different shape at Royal Cinque Ports, where they're more wavy and more ripply and kind of up and down, whereas at Royal St. George's they're very rounded and kind of mountainous. And so it's just a completely different kind of terrain, even though it is the same stretch of linksland. All these courses basically abut each other.
All right, let's get to kind of some of your favorite courses from the trip. I'd love to hear from each of you your 3 favorite courses and why. And if it's the same, feel free to discuss together. This is a good time for me to check out for a few minutes.
Yeah, well, okay. So 3 favorite courses from the trip. I loved all the courses that we saw on the trip. I think that, a consensus among everybody who went on the trip is that Royal St. George's was probably the best course that we saw. A very complete golf course. Many great UK links courses that you see maybe lack a little bit of complexity at the green complexes, but that's not something that you find at Royal St. George's. These greens are incredibly sophisticated and natural and beautiful and interesting. And so it's one of the most complete golf courses from tee to green that I've ever seen. So Royal St. George's was sort of a cut above for me. I absolutely
Is it maybe a great marker that tour pros dislike Royal St. George's? It's the least favorite of tour pros in the Open Rota. Is that maybe the best moniker you can have? Yeah,
for sure.
Is that a great endorsement that like regular golfers will love this golf course?
It's a great indication, I think.
Probably.
I'm not sure how many of them get out to see Royal Cinque Ports too, but Royal Cinque Ports is in some ways similar to Royal St. George's in the sense that it's a very complete golf course, has amazing land, and then the greens there are absolutely incredible. So those were probably for me the top 2 courses, most memorable and most compelling golf courses that we saw on the trip. And then Sunningdale Old, absolutely brilliant golf course that Matt actually didn't get to see, but such an interesting heathland golf course. That would probably come in third for me on my list of favorites.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Royal St. George's is certainly the top dog. I wasn't expecting like a ton. Like obviously I knew it's a very highly regarded golf course, but I was pretty definitive in thinking that Royal Portrush was the best open venue in the rotation. And after seeing Royal St. George's, I think there's a pretty like tough battle there between them of which one's the best. Like the set of greens at Royal St. George's are almost mind blowing. Like there's not a single one that you wouldn't want to like skip over or miss. They're just absolutely incredible. And then out of the Surrey courses that I saw, Garrett mentioned I didn't get to go to Sunningdale. I made a little bit of a side quest to the Addington Club, which is really cool. It's kind of ongoing, a lot of renovation and restoration work under Clayton, DeVries, and Pont. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening there, which was really fun to see. But
Some of the before and after images of the Addington and the tree removal and the restored greens are just shocking. I got to know Ryan when he was in the United States, like in, kind of early 2017 maybe. And he gave me his master plan book, and it's unbelievable to just see this work being carried out. I also appreciate the process that they're going through where they're kind of taking it piecemeal. They haven't done just a full shutdown. It seems like a very sensible project.
Yeah, it's really cool because right after I guess Harry Colt came in and did some work, I think in the late 20s, early 30s, but they took a bunch of photos from like all the tees, like these incredibly high resolution photos of a lot of the holes right after he did a lot of work. So they have like these incredible kind of archives of what the course was and what they're looking to restore it back to, as well as the original architect, Abercrombie. That was like his home course, and he was constantly revising it over his lifetime, kind of like the stories you hear of Mackenzie at Pasatiempo and Donald Ross at Pinehurst number 2. So it's almost like this one architect's like baby and child who he nurtured and was constantly evolving throughout his career. So it is really a cool golf course to go see. And I would definitely recommend it to anyone looking for a trip to this area. But the last course I wanted to touch on, I'd agree with Garrett, and Royal St. George's and Cinque Ports is kind of 1 and 2. And then St. George's Hill, which is a Harry Colt design in the Heathlands. It's on a very like pretty severe piece of land, a lot of hills, pretty good walk, but it's an incredible golf course. Really cool golf holes throughout. The front 9 I really enjoyed was all I got to really walk and play, and then I had to skirt off and fly the drone to take some photos. But that one really sticks out in my memory, and one I really hope to get back after they complete a lot of their restoration work they have scheduled next summer.
How, so they're working with Brian Schneider. I was curious, that photos of St. George's Hill have always struck me as this is a place I would really like to play golf. What do you think its potential is with some sensical work there?
I mean, I think it's already, it's already an incredible golf course. Like it's only going to get better and better and better. Specifically, I know like holes like the 8th has this huge landform. It plays up on this hill. It's a world-class par 3. But I think there used to be a double green on that hole. So there was a green kind of on this lower tier where the land dips down severely. The bunkers in the hill short of the green used to be these massive like blowout styled bunkers that were really dramatic looking. So reclaiming a lot of that stuff from back in the 20s, kind of this ruggedness of the site, and then green expansions, maybe expanding some of the corridors just a little bit. The corridors are plenty wide for play, and the trees don't really come into play, but I think opening it up a little, regaining some of the heather kind of off the sides of the playing corridors is just going to descend that golf course to like a very, very high tier of golf course in the world.
Yeah, I think what has happened at a lot of Heathland courses over time is that they've been left alone for the most part, and they've evolved because of that, but they've never really been severely changed, severely altered. And so at St. George's Hill, you have a golf course that I think is really well preserved. It is a well preserved Harry Colt design, and it just needs a little bit of brightening up at the edges to be really, really great. And I think the same could be said of the new course at Sunningdale Golf Club, which is another Harry Colt design from the 1920s. Gil Hance has a plan out there right now to remove quite a few trees, but aside from that, just to widen things out a bit, take the greens back to their former dimensions, recapture some intricacies of the bunkers. And if you do a little bit of that work at these golf courses, then I think it's really going to stun people what they look like afterwards. And so St. George's Hill and Sunningdale New, for me, are in a similar category. They are these extremely well-preserved golden age designs that just could use a little bit of TLC, and then they'll really shine.
If you guys were going to put one of the holes that you played in your backyard from the trip, what hole would it be?
Oof. Go for it, Matt.
That's a tough
Let me
one.
think.
There's two that really stick out to me.
You got to pick one.
All right, I'll pick the one on the coast. It's the 6th hole at Royal Cinque Ports. Unfortunately, I did not get to play it, but I walked it. And then
short par 4.
And then I
Matt was on photography duty, so
Yeah,
he got some sparing
Yeah.
golf. He had a tough assignment.
Matt worked in some golf when he could, but he had a job to do, and he was very attentive to that job. Then there was good light at Royal Sinkport, so you know.
Yeah, but I actually parked up on a dune right above this golf hole to fly the drone. So I was just sitting there looking at the hole for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Saw a few groups come through. But it's this really cool short par 4, plays over some of the most dramatic land on the course. But the tee is kind of perched up against, there's this seawall that they built, kind of a natural seawall. It's like a big berm essentially with a walking path on top of it. But the course used to flood quite a bit. And I think in the 80s, they built this giant berm to help the course from flooding. But this pole plays right up along that. And directly in line with the tee, you can see the green through these massive dunes. You'll see the flag sticking up. But the fairway goes down to the left, kind of plays down into this hollow. And then if you go that route, you're just going to hit a wedge shot up to this green. But the green is perched up on this like really high point and it falls off on all sides. So from the tee, like if it's downwind, which it was when we were there, the caddies were just saying like, send it, like everyone go for the green if you had the distance. So you just like see this flag poking up out of these wild undulating dunes. So there's two ways to play it. Go for it or play it safe. And then even if you play it safe, you're down in this fairway and you're just looking up at this green, like probably 15, 20 feet above you. And it's a pretty small green. The entire green pitches away from you. So you have to have like a very precise wedge shot to get it close. But it's bunkerless. Like it plays over this tumultuous land. And it just looks like a hole that like you could just play 100 times and never have a bad time playing it.
It would be a different outcome every time on the 6th hole at Royal Sinkport because the land is so wild there and it just can deflect your ball in all sorts of different directions. Yeah, I love that hole as well. There are a few at Royal Sinkports that I would put in the same category, and those holes are all kind of clustered around that middle section of the golf course where the dune land gets really wild. And so that's a lot of candidates there. You know, I think that, you know, when I'm thinking of a hole that I want to put in my backyard or a green that I'd want to put in my backyard, I go more toward some of the Heathland courses that we saw. And the reason for that is that the architecture in the English Heathlands is so interesting to me because it was really some of the first great inland golf architecture.
It's when the practice became professionalized.
Exactly. Yeah. And so Sunningdale New was built in 1901, and really nothing had been built that was like it previously because, you know, a golf course that was that well worked out on an inland property was sort of foreign to the minds of golfers at the time. And so, you know, architects who were working on these Heathland properties were inventing the profession basically as they were going along. And that gives the architecture there a kind of freedom and spontaneity that you don't really see many places. And a great example of just the weirdness of golf course design in the Heathlands is at Huntercombe Golf Club, the first golf course that we saw, Willie Park Junior golf course from the first decade of the 20th century. And the greens there are incredibly inventive. And you can tell that they were built by somebody who was just trying things and who didn't know what a golf course green should look like. and so they have this wonderful creativity to them. Specifically, the fourth green, the green on the fourth hole at Huntercombe Golf Club is absolutely incredible. I'm not exactly sure how to describe it, but it has a severe two-tiered construction with a very low section on the right side. And it's just, and the whole thing is a little bit sunken down into the ground. There are these sharp edges all around it. a couple of times recently, the American architect Andy Staples has built versions of this green at a couple of his courses, specifically at Meadowbrook Golf Club outside of Meadowbrook Country Club outside of Detroit. On one of the holes there, he built kind of a replica of the fourth green at Huntercombe. And it's just so fun, so spontaneous, so creative. That's the kind of green that I would want to have in my backyard. There are a couple of examples of these types of greens, of these really eccentric greens at Huntercombe that would be equally fun to try to replicate. And then at Woking Golf Club as well, there are some versions of like double plateau greens there that just kind of come out of nowhere. And you look at them and just say, why can't architecture be this free and quirky anymore?
It's a great question. It seems like that might be a trend of the future, if I had to guess, is that there will be more freedom and a little bit less worry about fairness, which has kind of dominated golf architecture since stroke play became the dominant form of the game of golf.
Let's hope so.
If you guys could do something differently about the trip, what would you have done? Other than, Matt, yours can't be play more golf.
One thing that I was really sad I didn't get to do was visit the castle in Windsor, where we were staying for about half the trip. I don't know all the history about it, but our hotel was directly across the street from it, so we were staring at it for 3 or 4 days, and it's just an enormous castle. People are saying there's like 2 or 3 churches in there that are really cool architectural design pieces that are worth seeing. I think just like going there and spending the day, like walking around this ancient castle would be a really cool thing to do. And I'm kind of sad that I didn't have more time to do that.
Yeah, I think building in some time on this kind of trip to go out and see attractions like that would be something I'd look to do, because the areas around these golf courses and the areas around where we were staying were so interesting, and I would have loved to explore them a little bit more. I mean, I think, when we spent a week basically seeing Heathland golf courses and then going down to the Sandwich Coast to see the links golf courses. And you just wonder what you could do with 2 weeks, basically. You'd probably play Royal Cinque Ports twice. You'd probably check out Rye Golf Club. You'd probably hit a couple more Heathland courses like Swinley Forest, and maybe go check out Walton Heath to really get a more complete sense of what Heathland golf is like. And so those are the things that are kind of on my mind. But I'm not sure for a week-long trip like we did that I would really do anything differently. I think it was basically a perfect trip for the amount of time that we had. And so for anybody who's looking to put together a week-long itinerary in the Heathlands and the southeast coast of England, I think we did a good itinerary, and I think you should pretty much copy it if you do something similar.
Yeah. You went on a trip with, was it 16 or 20?
It was
15.
15 other people. Yeah.
15 other people.
In addition to us. Yeah.
Some people come as pairs, some people come as singles, some people come as, other denominations of small groups. What were your takeaways from the trip of people meeting and playing world-class golf together?
We had so much fun, I think everybody was there for the right reasons. Everybody wanted to see some extremely historically interesting golf courses and learn about the architecture there, and so we just had an absolutely wonderful time, and I think everybody got to kind of play and talk with everybody else, and so our group cohered pretty quickly, and yeah, I mean, what can you say? We just had an absolutely wonderful time.
Yeah, it's really cool to just go on a trip like this with a bunch of strangers, essentially. I think I knew one person on the trip outside of Garrett that I'd previously met. And then by the end of the trip, like everyone's exchanging phone numbers and saying, hey, if you're ever in this area, come check out my club and I'll host you, and all different kinds of things like that. Like people are already setting up future trips with each other just from, spending a quick week with a like-minded kind of golf nut. Creates these kind of lasting relationships. So I think that was one really cool thing to kind of sit back and watch develop as the trip went on.
Yeah.
I did
our pretty quickly.
Yeah, I did our trip to Scotland, and one of my favorite lasting memories is just thinking about we took buses places, but we stayed in St. Andrews, and how disjointed the group was at the start of the trip, where people didn't really know each other. They were, they would talk, but people stuck to their clans. And then by the end, it was just like, what's everybody doing for dinner? We're going here, maybe one other group's going here. And it was like kind of like everybody melded together and you saw everybody getting along and everybody friends. It's an interesting, like, just social experiment, these trips, and it's fascinating to see. Obviously, like, I think, like, when you share a passion like golf, it makes it really easy to make friends because you're starting from a ground of, like, oh, we have a common interest that we can always fall back on talking about if there's a dead spot. And that's been my favorite experience about the trips, is just watching the people and them interact. And I think like the thing that I didn't think going into it that I walk away with is like, this is like an exceptional way to go. If you can go, but you like, these trips are really hard to do as a single or a twosome or even a foursome. And it's really hard to organize a time where 8 people can get together to go somewhere for a week. And these trips, I think the value of them is like, if you want to go somewhere, this provides you a wonderful opportunity to go somewhere and have everything taken care of for you. And you're going to make friends along the way.
Yeah. And there's time to make friends. There's time to forge these connections with people because you aren't constantly running from one place to the next. You can sit down and have a meal with somebody. You can go out and play a round of golf with them and end up spending several hours with them during the day. And you aren't constantly pressed to go to the next thing. And so, it just feels very natural the way that these friendships and connections form over the course of a trip like this, because you all start from a common basis of you love golf, you're passionate about travel and golf courses, and from that foundation, I personally find it very easy to build relationships with people, and I think that's. That's something both Matt and I really appreciated on this trip.
On that, our trips are filled for 26. We're doing 3. I anticipate we'll do more in 27, but just keep your eyes out for those. And if you want to book a trip, we do trip planning for people now as well, so that you can find that on our website. Garrett and Matt, big thanks for coming on. I can't wait to see all the stuff that you guys will make from England. I know that there will be a guide, there will be a lot of social videos, there will be a lot of course profiles written on the website. So I can't wait to see all the stuff you guys produce from a once in a lifetime trip. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you for listening to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. We will be back next week. I think we're going to do a podcast with Kevin Van Valkenburg about some big topics in golf. And look forward to doing that. And big thanks to PJ Clark always for producing and editing this podcast. Thanks.